Hello, my name is Lauren Redden, and I am presenting the work of myself and Alan Bugg titled Development of a Required Service Learning Course Stakeholders, Perceptions, and Lessons Learned. So, today we're going to talk about the typical things that you talk about in a research presentation. We're going to hit the background and literature. We're going to hit the methods and materials. We'll hit results and discussion and end with some conclusions. I want to thank ASC for the opportunity to present. Although it's virtual, we are excited to do this. So let's jump into the background and literature. Like other land-grant institutions, the university that both myself and Alan Bugg work at is Auburn University, and we have impactful service as one of the strategic goals. Farrow and Burt in 2018 found that high impact practices and impactful service allow students to connect those experiences to a more profound level of learning. So the level of learning is more profound when students participated in small service learning projects as well as other high impact practices. There is a gap, and the reason for one reason why we did this study is because we see that there are several enriching service learning elective courses that have been highlighted in recent years, and even so in the ASC proceedings at our conferences. There is also evidence that incorporation of a small-scale service learning project as maybe a module or an element of the course has been done and documented and researched. But one of the gaps is that we have not seen a lot of literature previous to our paper on a required course in a construction management curriculum that features a large-scale service learning project. And the definition of large-scale was really just something that would require more than a few weeks of a semester. It would require approximately 400 hours, at least 400 man hours total in order to execute the work. And so over the last 25 years, our school has incorporated service learning as smaller components of various courses. But in a recent curriculum review, the decision was to increase our commitment by creating a standalone service learning course, and it is required in our new curriculum model for all of our undergraduate students to successfully complete. Another gap is that the research notes that reflection is an important element to service learning as a pedagogical as implementation into the classroom and the learning of an individual. But there seems to be a critical gap in existing construction education literature of only reporting on the student reflection, and maybe sometimes incorporating the instructor of record as the author, giving some perspective of the instructor, what the instructor documented, but kind of an all-encompassing, overarching look at all the stakeholders involved was something that we also didn't see a lot of in the current literature prior to this research. So let's talk a little bit about the background of the course. Once it was developed with the new curriculum model in our school, we started with the first semester implementing the new curriculum in 2018, fall of 2018. And so this research is in particularly only focusing on the data collection that occurred in fall of 18 and spring of 19. That would mean that there's 2 cohorts of 30 students for each semester, 60 total each semester. So 120 students total was the population size of the student feedback possibility. The possibility of 120 students to provide the feedback, although it was voluntary. So we did not have all 120, which I'll talk about in a moment. Each cohort was divided into 3 teams of 10 students each. So there were 6 project teams each semester. And then there was a RFP process that the nonprofit organizations went through in order for their project to be considered as a possible option for our student teams. At this point, I'll mention that the faculty There's one faculty member that now has a service is now named as the service learning coordinator within our school, and that individual has a course buyout for that position that he holds, and so he was heavily involved in the RFP process, or is heavily involved in the RFP process before the semester start. Once the semester starts, the students are asked to prepare and submit a site-specific safety plan, cost estimate, and a schedule of their project. And they essentially create this proposal package. They present it to the owner as a pitch, and the course instructor is also engaged. Once the owner is satisfied with that proposal and pitch, they move into the notice to proceed. And this is typically occurring around week 5 or 6 in the semester. And then the remaining weeks of the semester, the students are building the project. So there's typically around 9 to 10 weeks of construction. The teams work together and are mostly assessed together, and so these are the assessment elements of the course. There are a few individual items that they're assessed on, but overall you can see that a lot of the submissions and a lot of the assessment of components are team-based. There is also one other thing to point out at this point is that the completion of the project itself is a part of the assessment, that 5%, which is kind of interesting, and we could talk about that another time. So let's talk about the research itself. There was a survey development period where we conducted a pretty thorough literature review to see what was out there. We brainstormed with some faculty and staff that are involved in service learning within our school and outside of our school. The survey was developed and implemented or handed out to students, and then there was one that was created and handed to owners at the completion or conclusion of the course for each of the semesters this study includes. And then we also simultaneously were developing interview questions. We conducted semi-structured interviews of the service learning coordinator, and then we conducted semi-structured interviews of the instructor of record. Those two individuals are separate. They are not the same person. And at this point, it's important to note that the two researchers of this paper or of this study were also neither of these two individuals. So we did some thematic coding of the data collection, and then just so you know, the student surveys had some Likert scale questions gauging their perceptions, as well as some open-ended questions. And then we had the owner survey set up similar to the student survey, but then of course gauging the owner's perception of the students in aspects, and also to rate their satisfaction level. We asked them a few open-ended questions as well, and we'll report on those questions in the results section. The faculty interviews were to get their perceptions and about the strengths and weaknesses and overall effectiveness of the course, and we could not fit the data into this paper from all three stakeholders because of the space limitation. So we actually have continued to work on this research and plan to publish the other data, as well as more collected data in other avenues. The results are that, again, each semester had 6 projects, so we had a total of 120 students in both semesters that were possible participants in the student survey. Out of that 120, we had 86 respondents, and so we have a response rate of 88% and then respectively 55 in the spring. And these were voluntary. They were not related to any assessment component of the course. So the first table is talking about the projects themselves, distance from campus, and then the other is the student hour workload, or how many hours they worked. This is on an individual basis. 77 hours per individual was the average for that fall. Their perception is that they felt most prepared in completing the safety plan aspect of their proposal, and then the evaluations of the course were that they most enjoyed the hands-on aspects, and the instructor availability and lack of instructor availability was the the primary was a primary issue, and lack of owner pre-construction prep was another issue. Owners were overall very satisfied, and of their satisfaction, professionalism was the one that was rated lowest, but still in both semesters well over 4.0 in the Likert scale of 1 to 5. The owners were asked what was the biggest challenge that the students faced, and the design changes during construction was one of the biggest things that they noted the students had a big challenge with. And obviously that also carried into what challenge they faced the most. Incomplete design and changes of original scope are big issues that we all know in the construction industry can create a domino effect. Overall, the owners were very satisfied. There's some quotes here of the owners saying that they would certainly participate in this program again. And the workload of the instructor, it was one significant issue that kept coming up, and our faculty has tried to work through that. We found that this is a course where it's pretty tough on one instructor to lead all 6 projects. The changes in the scope was obviously something that continued to be an issue. And so we've worked through that through the RFP process, trying to work with the service learning coordinator on ironing out the design before the semester starts. The encouraging findings were that the students really appreciated the hands-on component, and the knowledge they gained was immense. And then what we found is that overall it's been a great thing, and we have just a lot of tweaking to do. So thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, specific questions about this course, please feel free to reach out to us. We are excited about the course, and we feel like we are helping the community in many, many ways with our students. And our students are overall doing great work. But there's limited time to talk about it here. And so if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out.